Is that how I should start?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. My name is Christopher Guidarelli. I teach 5th grade in District 13 in Brooklyn, New York. And today I taught an ELA lesson. In this lesson, the students did a shared inquiry discussion based on a focus question that was directed at a rigorous text that we've read over the last week. The text is called A Game of Catch, and it was actually published in The New Yorker for adults first, and we've read it now for 3 days. And on the third day, we have a discussion about a focus question where the students use text evidence to respond to each other.
Great. Good. So first question, how does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before the lesson and what will come after it?
So this lesson connects on prior knowledge and prior lessons in many ways. First of all, the act of having a shared inquiry discussion is really a process that the students need to develop over time. The students have now been having discussions like this particular group of students for almost 2 to 3 years. Some students that are new this year have been doing it all year with us. So that actual discussion technique is really a skill that they develop throughout the year. Being able to use text evidence is a skill that we've worked on all year. So when the students respond to each other, they not only can make an assertion, make a claim to answer the question, they also have to have text evidence to support their claim. On top of that, they need to respond directly to each other when they're talking in this discussion. Should we turn the air off?
Can we?
Did I just ruin it?
No, you're
I'm making your editing job harder.
All right. Do you want to pick it up from
Yep.
the middle there? Okay.
So also in the discussion, we want the students to respond directly to each other, and that's also a skill that comes before what you saw today. And even today, the students still work on responding to each other. A lot of times they get very excited to share. They love doing these discussions. They love responding and trying to figure out the answer. And since there is no one correct answer, it's very exciting for them. So that's something else that we've worked on prior. And then with this particular story, it's not the first time we read it today. Of course, we've read it 2 other times as a class, and that helped develop their background knowledge of the story. We've also discussed vocabulary of the story. Students were able to share questions they had to clarify any mismatch in meaning as they read it on their own. So as we come into a shared inquiry discussion, it's actually been happening throughout the week already, the whole process with this story. Should we close that door?
Is it bothering you?
It's distracting me. I get distracted.
Okay, yeah.
Will you close that, please? Thanks.
Okay, so we'll go on here. Next question is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of text designed to build skills and knowledge?
Yes, the text we used today was designed in a sequence to build knowledge and skills. It's part of the Junior Great Books reading program, so the stories are actually linked in themes to build their skills and knowledge. And on top of that, we choose a rigorous text that has
Let's go back here to, is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of text designed to build skills and knowledge?
the text we use today is part of a sequence designed to build skills and knowledge. The particular text we use is part of the Junior Great Books Foundation reading program, and they actually link the text into themes that help build skills based on the themes that they're linked to. Along with that, throughout the whole year, we've used only rigorous text at grade level, reading level. So it wouldn't be a surprise when they read it. You know, a rigorous text that's at high level, they're really used to this. It's very much a pattern of the class. It's a pattern of the Junior Great Books program. It's just what they're used to doing in school, which is why it comes really naturally to them. And with that, sometimes it's difficult to build skills and knowledge with grade level text, especially for low achieving readers. So with the Common Core, texts are supposed to be at grade level for all students. So I think that that's a challenge to teachers. So with that, it just comes with more scaffolding. Before we did this lesson, lower readers I was able to pull out and work with them in a small group to help scaffold that high level text for them so that they would be able to participate with their peers.
Talk about the standards targeted in the lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard?
So when you look at the Common Core standards, reading literature standard 1 talks about quoting accurately from the text when talking explicitly or drawing inferences. So basically the entire lesson is where students are responding to a question and using text evidence. So that standard is probably the most highlighted standard in the lesson, and in the way that they speak and the way that they write, which then brings us to other standards. Writing, standard 1 is to write opinion pieces, and really when you're answering the question, it is your opinion, your assertion, what you think is the correct answer. As you can see, different students had different answers. Even at the end, no one decided on one answer, which is the beauty of doing shared inquiry discussion and writing opinion pieces. So when the students write their response, it is their opinion to what they think the correct answer is, and then they use text evidence to support it. Along with that, we have speaking and listening standards with the Common Core. Standard 1 talks about having collaborative discussions with diverse partners on grade 5 text. And that's obviously what was going on during the lesson. We have a grade 5 text, and the students are collaborating. We did the whole group discussion, and then they also got to work in pairs to discuss as well. And sometimes we'll do paired discussions on the days before this to kind of build the confidence in that speaking and listening. And then also standard 3 talks about summarizing a speaker's points. When they talk to each other, they need to listen to each other and understand what their peers are saying. And if you'll notice, even at one point a student said, "I can't remember what you said, can you clarify?" And they're talking to each other. And that really is a major goal of the shared inquiry discussion, is combining all of these standards together. And I think it's really effective for them because it's natural. It's like dealing with these standards in isolation might seem a little bit unnatural. And there we're writing, talking all at the same time about something that they actually really want to answer. So the discussion standards are just as important as the writing standards.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplifies?
Can I get a copy of that sheet?
Yeah. You want this one?
I had one ready and I knew. Yeah, that's cool.
There you go.
I did go through these yesterday. Okay, this lesson, it focuses actually on all 3 of the core indicators. As I was reviewing it, the first one says focus each lesson on a high quality text. The text is a rigorous text. It's at grade level. The Lexile level is a little bit above grade level. And all the texts that we use in this reading program are high quality text. As I said, this text was first published in the New Yorker. It was not published for children. It's a high quality text. The second core action is to employ the question and tasks that are text dependent and text specific. The entire lesson is trying to figure out what is the answer to the focus question, and it has to be text dependent, your answer. And as you can see, when the kids talk to each other, they always find text evidence to respond to each other. And if someone doesn't have text evidence, they call each other out on it, and they're like, but that doesn't make sense because it doesn't say that in the text, which I love when the kids do that. And they're obviously text specific as well, because the question directly deals with the text. And the core action standard 3 is provide all students with opportunities to engage in the work of the lesson. I would say this is the most challenging of all teachers at every lesson, to engage all students, that word all. But it provides opportunities because the lesson is part of a sequence. So we build the confidence as we go, and we're not done. We still may discuss again tomorrow and then write again tomorrow. In this one lesson, students can engage in the writing at the beginning of the lesson. They can engage in the turn and talk. They can engage in the writing at the end of the lesson. They can engage in the whole discussion. Something that I've learned with doing this kind of work is that sometimes a student may not seem engaged, but then they write the response and it's amazing. So the level of engagement, it has to be assessed later on in the way that they write. The discussion, I would like to see all students engage in, and as the teacher, I keep track of who spoke and who didn't, and as we go on, I try to bring in kids that haven't spoke, and then the students actually at the end evaluate themselves to talk about the collaboration, and one of the things that they grade themselves on is, did everyone participate? So, and I had them evaluate the group because there's also a rubric where they could evaluate themselves, but I like them to think about, did everyone participate? Because some students love to speak and want to take over and engage the whole time, and then the quieter students don't, so we try to make that a really important part of the shared inquiries to make sure that everyone gets engaged, and I want the students to know that that's one of our goals. It's not me trying to get you engaged, you guys become engaged. And the last thing about this is most of them want to become engaged. As you can see, they get pretty heated about what the correct answer is, and they want to know, and even at the end, a student asks me, what do I think? They really want to be engaged. They really want to know what is the correct answer. I want to be heard. They really want to become engaged. And the only time a student becomes disengaged is when they feel like they didn't get engaged enough. Like they didn't speak enough and someone spoke more than them, and then they get a little bit, annoyed with that. But I rambled a lot with that one.
You're fine. Doing good.
Edited good.
Right. All right, so moving on to the shifts. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
So this lesson deals with the shifts required by the Common Core state standards, because the Common Core calls for text to be more rigorous. It's a rigorous text. The Common Core calls for students to use text evidence. They have to use text evidence. The Common Core calls for students to be engaged and closely read a text. They've closely read this text now. This will be the third time they've read it. And when you close read, you read a text multiple times for multiple reasons and multiple meanings. And that's what we've done. So today you saw the third time we've dealt with this text. Each time it's a different purpose. The first time was to understand and get the gist, and to clarify meaning, to make sure that we're all there. The second day is really to have a directed focus where the students mark the text with different notes and think about one area of the text. And then today is really when we open it up even further and go a little bit deeper, which is probably the biggest shift that we really deal with. And I will say this program, the students have been doing it honestly before the Common Core. And so when the Common Core shifts came out, it was really part of the culture of this program in this school before. And then it really falls nicely with the Common Core and the shifts that are involved with those standards.
How did you support all students in working with the grade level text? For example, how did you provide scaffolding for students below grade level so they can read grade level?
Right, so providing scaffolding for students with grade level text is definitely a challenge of all teachers. And with the Common Core, all students are supposed to be reading grade level text, and I think you can scaffold for them, in many ways. One thing we do is small groups. Before we read it as a whole class, I'll pull some of the students that are reading lower than grade level and read it with them independently in a small group. Also in the writing we'll scaffold, I'll provide prompts and sentence starters for students that are at a lower reading and writing level. It's also sometimes they'll mark the text ahead of time, so when we come into these discussions, students that are lower at lower reading levels, they kind of know different points that they can jump to. And what's amazing is with all that scaffolding, when you do come into the shared inquiry, it's actually really hard to, if you don't know the students, to decide which ones were the low achieving readers. So to me, a goal if I scaffolded properly, when we do shared inquiry, it's not obvious who the low achieving readers are. So there's many different ways. And then on top of that, working with students one-on-one during independent reading time builds into being able to read grade level text.
How do you know the students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions and tasks with precision?
I'm able to see if the students responded to the text-dependent questions with precision based on their oral responses and their written response. So as we're doing the discussion, I have a clipboard and I'm marking who spoke, was it text-dependent, and just kind of jotting down that. And then also what we have in hard evidence is the written response. And what I like about the written response is I have them right before the discussion, and they already know how to respond, as it's something we've been working on we use a protocol called ACE, where we first have an assertion, then you back it up with a citation, then you explain how it all connects. And then at the end of the discussion, they write again with another paragraph about what they think the answer to the prompt is. And it's interesting to see whose responses changed based on the discussion and whose responses did not change because they're adamant that they had the correct answer and the correct opinion to start with. So I would use their writing as the most hard evidence, and then I'll base it on a rubric that we created that assesses whether they met the standards of answering a text-dependent question.
Which behaviors from core action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson?
Say it again, please.
Which behaviors from core action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson?
Providing all students with opportunities to engage. Yeah, okay. Core action 3 says, provide all students with opportunities to engage in the work of the lesson. And what behaviors the students exhibited that show that is them speaking in the discussion, shows their engagement in the lesson. Their written response shows their engagement in the lesson. The turn and talk shows their engagement in the lesson. Even if you can notice if they're listening based on their turning the page with the student who's sharing. And they're responding to that student. It shows they were engaged when the student before listens. So it's being very observant of the students, and their behavior is just their involvement. And what I've noticed in doing shared inquiry type discussions is they want to be engaged. It's not a struggle to engage them. It's almost like you have to have them hold back because they become so engaged.
Reflecting on the lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
Reflecting on the lesson, what worked well and what I might do differently. What went well is the students' engagement. They all came up with numerous answers. There were numerous passive inquiry, and I think that went really well. I love that the students they're very adamant about their opinion, and they always find their own text evidence. And I love that we've built a culture in the classroom that they feel confident in their answer. And it's like they listen to each other, and sometimes they change with each other. It's a very academic conversation, and I think that went well. Watching students change their opinion is always a success for me to see, because it means they were really engaged in the conversation. They were using the text dependency to change their opinion. Their responses are amazing, so that went well. They were engaged, they understood the question, they answered the question with clarity. What I would improve on is there's always one or two students that become discouraged because they didn't talk enough. And then they don't want to talk anymore because they feel like they didn't get to talk enough. And I think that's just getting used to this kind of discussion. It's also being, so what I would like to improve on is to really help students that get discouraged, because to give them skills more to encourage themselves, join in, and not get frustrated.
And the last question is, were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
Was there any? I wasn't really surprised with anything during the lesson. I'm always amazed at their responses because it blows me away that they're in 5th grade and they're just so intelligent, and and they're just, sorry, I'm stuttering about that. But what surprises me, I'm amazed at the way that they discuss with each other, the way that these are students from Brooklyn, and they're just so, can we start this one over?
Yeah,
I gotta think about it.
Oh, you're fine.
Let me think for a second. Without filming me, I'm just talking it out with you. You could keep it on down.
Right.
But that bothered me, but it didn't surprise me.
Right.
Because he's a child who gets frustrated if he's not called on and if he doesn't speak every other time.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready. Got it. Okay. As I reflect on the lesson, what impressed me with the students is the way that they all collaborate with each other and the way that they are able to change their opinions based on each other's responses. That's a major goal of mine as we start the year, is to, when we first start with shared inquiry discussion, a student has their opinion at the beginning and they really believe that's it and they don't change it at all. So to me, it's always a success and something that impresses me when children change based on what someone else says, saying, I really, after listening to that student, I really don't believe what I thought before anymore. So I love that. Surprises. I'm surprised at certain kids that change their opinion because they usually don't change, and then a couple of them changed it today, which is growth for all of us. Also, a student put his head down in the meeting, and that I wouldn't say that surprised me. And knowing that student, he gets discouraged if he's not called on and if he doesn't speak a lot. So that's still something I'm working on with him, is to not get discouraged and stay involved, because he's actually above grade level reader. His response is wonderful, but he'll put his head down if he goes maybe 2 or 3 times when he had something to say and he didn't get to say it. So that's something that bothers me, because it's a goal of mine to help him work through that.
Great. Perfect.
Cool.